Support for WUWM podcast comes from Hop Harvest and Vine and Good Harvest Market in Pewaukee, part of One Destination, combining farm-to-table dining, local craft beers, and organic groceries under one roof. More at goodharvestmarket.com.
You're listening to Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR station. Here's one of our favorite conversations about the people, places, and organizations that shape Milwaukee.
President Trump continues to tout a lie that he won the 2020 election, despite evidence that confirms that Joe Biden won. While Trump continues to focus on what happened in 2020, these claims about election integrity matter in a midterm election year, when voters are counting on the voting system to be safe and secure. Edgar Lin is with Protect Democracy, a non-partisan anti-authoritarian group that uses litigation, advocacy, and research to protect elections. He says one thing that's different about Trump's election lies in 2026 is they're backed by the federal government. Lin joins WUWM's Maayan Silver to break down the claims coming from the president and the facts about our election system this midterm election year.
Your executive override report summarizes basically the Trump administration's subversion efforts in 2022 and 2024 and has described them as deceive, disrupt, and deny. Before we get into each of the individual components, what does it mean overall?
Okay, so this is a three-part playbook. Deceive is manufacturing a fraud problem that isn't there, right? The non-citizen voting narrative, the inflated bad voter roll claims, but then using the machinery of the government to make disinformation look like actual evidence. So that's the deceive section. The next section is disrupt, using that manufactured doubt in the deceive prong as the pretext to make voting harder or seize control of election data and machinery. The voter roll lawsuits, the push for the SAVE Act, the pressure on election officials, right? Those all fit into the disrupt prong. And finally, the third one is deny. If the favored candidate loses anyway, they use everything that was built in the first two stages to contest, delay, or overturn results. So that's kind of the big picture of the deceive, disrupt, and deny strategy.
And of course, there's the first prong you were talking about, the deceive portion. There's the big lie, which is that basically Trump claims that he won the 2020 election when all the evidence is that Biden won that election. And then there's other claims about mail-in voting, voting machines being rigged, lies about non-citizens that you've mentioned. But a little bit of the federal action that Protect Democracy says is being used to fuel these lies in 2026. To start, we've got the FBI's January 2026 raid of an election office in Fulton County, Georgia, and the administration's demands for full unredacted voter rolls from 48 states and D.C. What are you watching for there? What do we need to know here?
Yeah, for the deceive strategy, right now it's disinformation being supercharged, right, from the White House. So I'll talk about it in the Wisconsin context. We'll start with the math problem in which this strategy is trying to inundate us with misinformation. So our elections, as you know, are radically decentralized. In Wisconsin, 1,800 plus municipalities run their election. To steal a national election, you need accomplices everywhere. In 2020, when the ask came to clerks, to secretaries of state in Wisconsin, it's not a secretary of state. However, Republican legislators and leaders in Wisconsin courts, they all said no. So, right now they are turbocharging the same lies that were already fed to in the past and trying to flood the zone with that information that then becomes sort of the predicate for their disruption. If we think about the Wisconsin misinformation recently, the president amplified a false claim that Wisconsin has more registered voters than eligible voters. Except here's the trick. It conflates the state's 8.3 million name list, which deliberately keeps inactive records as a fraud prevention practice, so that official can spot if someone moved or became deceased. Um, with roughly the 3.7 million people actively registered, right? So it is basically continuing to spew disinformation and misinformation for the public that then justifies the action that they may take under the disrupt strategy.
You mentioned Wisconsin. Here, the FBI is also seeking interviews with Milwaukee election officials and staff who helped administer the 2020 election. How is that playing into the overall strategy?
I think that's exactly what the hope of the disrupt strategy, what they envision. So the goal then is to, if they were to seize ballots from 2020, the issue is, would they then take it and match it with their system that has been shown to be highly inaccurate, the SAVE system that wasn't designed to do this job? Let's start with that, right? And could there be pretexts to then remove people who are actual eligible voters, US born citizens, which we've seen actually in other states? And I can probably pull up the number in a little bit, but in Alabama, thousands of people were flagged. And then they said, oh, wow, actually, they are US citizens, and some of them are natural born citizens. And so these type of strategies, the disrupt strategy in terms of sort of FBI investigating these old ballots, fits exactly into that 3D play: deceive, disrupt, deny. I think it is telling right now that nothing has happened. There has been claims about election fraud in Wisconsin, specifically in Milwaukee in 2020. At this moment, nobody has been arrested, nobody has been charged.
This is Lake Effect. I'm WUWM's Maayan Silver, speaking with Edgar Lin of Protect Democracy, a nonpartisan anti-authoritarian organization. You were talking a little bit about the SAVE system and how that ties into what the Trump administration is trying to do with interviews with Milwaukee election officials and trying to obtain ballots from Wisconsin from 2020. Can you just spell out and just define what all the elements are of in that approach there, what the SAVE system is, how what you think that Trump is trying to get at with these interviews, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So the plan is to run the voter database into this error-prone, safe database to flag the suspect voters and to push ultimately for the states to remove them. And that's how an inaccurate match becomes an eligible citizen getting purged. SAVE was built to check immigration statuses for, like I said earlier, not for this purpose, but for benefits application. It was never ever designed to verify citizenship for voting, and I think nearly 1 in 5 queries can't produce a definitive answer. And what's even worse is DOJ has sent states draft agreements that would let the department handpick voters for removal with no criteria at all for who gets removed. No rules, no standards, no limits. It's just hard to imagine who gets picked and who doesn't. And so uh, we have done this. We know how this works, and I've just pulled up the number. Alabama flagged over 3,200 voters as non-citizens through that system, then admitted 2,074 of them were eligible, including a natural-born citizen who made a form error. Um, Virginia's purge swept up a woman born in Brooklyn. Ohio referred 521 cases for prosecution. Supposedly, exactly one was legitimate. And so I just want to bring that out here in the sense that the SAVE system is not something that is truly designed for this and therefore yields a lot of inaccurate results. So once you take the voter data, plug it into the SAVE system, you can imagine when the errors come, those people will be challenged for eligibility to vote, right? In Wisconsin, at least, we have same-day registration. In states where there's not same-day registration, those voters could be permanently removed for this election, at least in Wisconsin, with same-day registration. If that was to happen, there is recourse for the voter.
And what can you tell us about the demands to seize state voter rolls and how the DOJ intends to use that voter roll data and share it with the Department of Homeland Security?
I think they're all working in concert at this point, right? The federal government is trying to create this unified system of all kinds of datas that they feed into it. So sharing data among the federal government agencies is happening, and that's already being executed as they continue to grab more data from wherever they can find. One area that they don't have is state voter data rolls. And this is why they've been so keen on trying to get this. As I was saying earlier, once you get the data roll, they will feed it into their system, and it's a black box. We don't know how the system works. What we do know are the results it yields, and we do know that they're inaccurate. And so people would be potentially removed, likely removed, I would say. And when that happens, it tilts the playing field on who are the eligible voters. If you're removed, let's say you're in Wisconsin, somehow your voter registration has been removed. Now, instead of going in line just to vote, now you have to get in line to go get registered, right? There might be a bottleneck effect, and when the line is long, somebody who's in the back of the line may say, "Hey, I've got other things to do. I got to go." And so it is a way to sort of directly impact voter engagement, to tilt the playing field to help their candidates.
And what do you think is the way that people can approach this now in 2026? Do you have any recommendations for people on how to deal with this that's, kind of in some ways out of their hands?
Yeah, I would say there are three things people can do, and I'm going to talk about simple things. The first one is get yourself ready. Double check your voter registration now. 2 minutes at myvote.wi.gov, right? Send that link to the 5 people they know, so that they can make sure that their registration is up to date. Know the election deadlines and make a plan to vote. Make a plan to vote early if that's the preferred method, in person or by mail, but make a plan to vote and vote early. If you are voting by mail, I would especially recommend that you vote early, given sort of the potential that's involved with USPS. Again, we have same-day registration as a backstop, so that's still an option. Second, become part of the system instead of just watching it. Sign up to be a poll worker with your municipal clerk. Wisconsin has lost a lot of clerks and a lot of election workers since 2020, right? The single most patriotic thing you can do this year is to help run the election and observe the process, the machine, the count. Share what you see. Firsthand account is an antidote to conspiracy theories. And third and finally, be ready to show up. If officials come under pressure to break the law this fall, peaceful, visible public support is what keeps them from facing it alone. The deception strategy runs on confusion and despair. Every registered voter, every poll worker, every accurate conversation at a kitchen table is a direct counter to it. None of us need to do everything. All of us can do something.
All right, Edgar Lin of Protect Democracy, thanks so much for speaking with us at WUWM.
Thank you, Maayan. Appreciate it.
Edgar Lin manages state-level election protection work at Protect Democracy, a nonpartisan, anti-authoritarian nonprofit that aims to protect elections. He spoke with WUWM's Maayan Silver. Election integrity is one of the top issues we've been seeing come in through WUWM's voter survey. If you have a question about the upcoming elections, you can fill out that survey yourself at WUWM.com.
That was the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast. It comes from your local NPR station, WUWM. Subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast to hear more great stories about Milwaukee.